YouTube, Twitter, you can usually find us on as we continue our mission to, talk about all the things that are happening and affecting us here in the borderland. A few very serious ones in mind because, I hope you all had a wonderful July 4th. Everyone except for those guys in my neighborhood shooting them off at 2 a.m. And not even like a bottle rocket or two, but like a full mortar set. Like, I can't talk about this too much because I'm definitely going to use some words I am not supposed to do on radio. I'm right up there with the idea of freedom and loving it, even if my dogs definitely don't. But anyone who was very enthused about that at 2 a.m., not a happy 4th to you because seriously, because with rights becomes responsibilities. And at a certain point, you're not exercising your freedom as so much as you're being a jerk. But again, I'm not going to stay on that one too long because I'm definitely going to get in trouble and word's going to slip out here. But in the meantime, hope you all did have a lovely 4th, unless you were one of those guys, in which case I'm coming for you. But otherwise, a lot of stuff happening over this, a long weekend, long holiday experience, including not so nice things, state, local, national, statewide, of course, Texas facing skyrocketing home energy bills, even as natural gas exports continue to hit record levels on their own right. That's a fun one here. And John Hertz was referencing some of the other things going on with some stuff coming out of the White House when it comes to energy supplies as well, blaming some of the gas station or energy companies. Let's work on the supply first is my continued contention. But then also locally, and I'm sure this will get people a little bit stirred up, a little bit more information coming out about the actual proposed plan for that county expansion of the hospital district, better known as UMC to you and me, the $345.7 million proposed plan. Of some of that sent to me, what is actually in it that you can go and see for yourself over there with our news partners at KFOX 14. Sure, that'll be just the very beginning of it, but also a very interesting vote coming out of El Paso City Council today. And again, start of the week here, I definitely still have a little bit of Monday brain myself, I will freely admit, but a whole lot more coming out about it. Well, I'll just read you the headline here on, again, from our news partners at KFOX 14. El Paso City leaders vote against policy aimed at decriminalizing abortions. And so this was essentially just that. And it was a split vote tiebreaker made by Mayor Oscar Leeser on this. You want to see some of the things in the clips from it, including for our news partners there. Again, kfox14.com, and it's right up near the top here. And essentially what the item was being called for, as co-sponsored by city reps Anello and Rivera, that saying that tax dollars from the city not being used to investigate abortion. And some of the discussion on it here definitely got a little bit heated. Packed house, particularly for a day right after a holiday weekend within El Paso's city council here. So again, you can check it on. I think that meeting, if it's still going on right now, I would not be surprised because that tends to be the case. Yep, in executive session, so not a whole lot to look at this exact moment, but that meeting definitely still going on here. And of course, this comes a little bit after that the City of El Paso Women's Commission that was approved in May by some of the council members as well. So yeah, there were a lot of public speaking on there. So you definitely should check out the coverage coming up from our news partners at KFOX 14 News at 9. But that's not even one of the other, I guess, solely major or more impacting things going on here locally. Over at El Paso Inc., a very interesting story about have ransomware attacks are coming against El Paso businesses. Now, I have never directly been involved with one or have the damage caused by one, I should say. No, I'm not a hacker. And if I could figure out how to make millions of dollars scamming people on the internet, I would have already been doing that. Not quite that smart, but that they're increasing on it here. So whatever business you may be in, it might behoove you to consider yourself a little bit better on dealing with the cybersecurity issues. Again, it's never actually happened to a business I've been in. At one point, there was something that it looked like a ransomware attack. Unfortunately, they somehow got it on a non-network computer. I think someone brought in a flash drive that they had been doing some, shall we say, dubious things on. My theory was never really proven, but they essentially tried to lock it down. I know that media organizations in general, that's one of the things that we're a little bit more hyper vigilant on, because I've seen some weird stuff happen with other local pages, none of ours here, thankfully, that I'm aware of anyway, but they are pretty constant. And the idea of essentially locking down all of your digital information, essentially think of it, if you want to put it in 1950s terms, coming in, stealing all of your file cabinets and saying you're not getting these back until you pay us in, I don't know, it would be a good analog of the time Cougarans, I don't know. But digital currency, usually Bitcoin these days. Though I'm kind of curious now that I think about it, if they're still wanting Bitcoin because of that drop in value. I mean, it's still worth tens of thousands of dollars, but still, it's a pretty big deal. So check out with them over there on what exactly is going on in that here. But of course, that's not even the only thing going on with City Council. Just as a other minor note, we are looking at, well, that summer weather really hitting us. I mean, we've been having this. You would not be blamed for thinking that maybe we had somehow been transported to like reaches of like Galveston, because seriously, it has been humid and muggy around here, and we keep having those rains. So just as a note, make sure you know and get your sandbags if you need to, because now flood control, you can get those at any day of the week. Starting Tuesday today through September 30th, and you get 10 bags per visit, but it can do you a decent amount. And they've got those central, northeast, east Mission Valley, and west areas that we talked about previously now available. And some of the other statewide things already being hinted at here. John Hurt saying that funny how El Paso thinks that they can trump the state. Pathetic. I think it was more on the idea of essentially local funds, which I guess there's an argument to be made that since the state passed this law, they can enforce it, but they can also require other enforcement, of course, here. John Browse saying that liberals can never handle reality even when events go against them. And Eric Von Holstein-Rathlow chiming in with us as well here today. But another one, John Hurt saying Texas declaring an actual invasion. Not exactly, but we'll get into that here in just a second, because there are usually a few finer points to be made with it. So that's going to more or less take us through our first break of the hour here right now, because there's also some other state level politics that we definitely are going to need to be getting into here. So with that, first break of the hour coming up here. You are, of course, tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot more we'll be getting in today. If you're wondering if we're going to have Robbie joining us from El Paso, given the short week, he'll be joining us next week on the program. So like I said, most first Tuesday of the month after the first non-holiday Monday. We'll not make it that complicated. He'll be on next week, but working on for a lot more with you on the show here today. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Some things focusing a little bit more on those state issues, including some things differing with that trigger law, already changing the entire abortion equation within the state, but also energy supplies and, well, what John brought up there. So stay tuned. We're Talk El Paso after this break. Whatever the situation is, I hope that you had a great 4th of July, again, except for those people at 2 a.m. You know who you are, but if you are looking to make sure that you had a great cookout, if you ever found it maybe a little bit lackluster or needing an extra flavor, boy, do I have a solution for you. And that's from the great supply of extra virgin olive oils, flavored olive oils, and balsamic vinegars from our friend over at Enhanced Flavors, because, well, they got the supply of all those 40 different varieties. Plus, they're always getting some new stuff, including the new one. I'm excited to try the El Paso Spicy Blend. Been told it's somewhere in between just kicking it up a notch and knock your socks off, which sounds just about right for me. They've got both. They've got the whole range of the spectrum when it comes to spicy and flavor filled. One of the ones that I really like is definitely their jalapeno lime. Just enough of a bite and definitely a lot of flavors. Great for marinades. Was doing more burgers and brats this kind of weekend, but you can bet your bottom dollar that I am going to be doing a whole lot more grilling as we keep having this wonderful weather out there. So that's just one of the ways you can use it. Goes great with every recipe and can really help spice up your life. So find them online at enhancedflavors.com. That's enhanced with a D, flavors.com. And don't forget to enter that code at checkout to get 15% off your next order. That is EF Radio, as in Enhanced Flavors Radio, just those two letters, EF Radio. Enter that at checkout, and you'll get your 15% off your next order, or find them out in the community. But for all the details and information on them, enhancedflavors.com. That's enhanced with a D, flavors.com.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Gateway East at Joe Battle, that overturned vehicle from the earlier crash is still there. It's blocking the on and off ramps. El Paso fires on the scene. I-10 westbound at Copia, an earlier crash blocking a couple of lanes. All lanes back open on the I-10 westbound there. And a crash reported Zaragoza at Sunfire Boulevard. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
All these moves by the Federal Reserve have caused the great unwind, and I want to make sure you don't get caught in the crosshairs. I'm Mark Moss, each week discussing the decentralized revolution. So join the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
Did you know audio memory lasts 6 times longer than visual memory? That's why businesses advertise with iHeartMedia, the #1 audio company in the country. Reach consumers with radio, podcasting, streaming, and more. Make your business a household name and visit iHeartAdvertising.com or call 844-BUY-RADIO. Grow your reach, grow your business. Call iHeartMedia today. Visit iHeartAdvertising.com or call 844-BUY-RADIO.
Do you find yourself stuck in a timeshare? Get the real facts about the timeshare industry and your options for cancellation. Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group, beat the largest timeshare company in federal court and has put together a free information guide that reveals the secrets the timeshare industry doesn't want you to know, including the 5 ways to get rid of your timeshare. Call now and get this timeshare cancellation guide absolutely free.
Call 800-738-9900. That's 800-738-9900.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, even at this point during the program. We'll open up those phone lines a little bit later, as we usually do. But if you want to leave your comments, if you've got the ability to do so, you got to think of we transition about not quite halfway through the show to more focus on calls, but we take the comments throughout, and we will dip into those. So if you want to chime in through our social media, facebook.com/Talk El Paso is definitely strongly the main one. It's where the Skeptic Squad lives anyway. And the Thunderdome comments often shows up here, as John even giving me a little bit of smoke, saying, got another day off. I must own the station. I don't know what to tell you, man. If I own the station, we definitely be talking about a lot of different things, I feel like, for the amount of trouble I get in sometimes for the things we do talk about. But in any case, I mean, yeah, I get it. You're making allusions to, well, my previous time in TV, among other things, and how other things like that work in town. But also, riddle me this. Name me another live local talk radio host here in town. And I'm not talking about the morning shows. They do their own thing. I consider themselves more on the infotainment spectrum. No hate towards that, just reality, because they definitely don't get into some of the things that we do here on this program. Name me another person in town doing that, and I'll tell you why they have to give me days off sometimes, basically. Also, we have some decent programming that Gav's in place here. So instead of having the junior reporter stuck on doing the overnight beat when there are 8 car crashes here in town, which I've also done, we have some replacement for you to keep it fresh. But let's just say I've been told you're taking some day off. It'll be either when you want it or when we want it, so might as well make it match up. I was happy to have the day off, spend some time with family and friends. I hope you all did as well, except for the 2 a.m. person. I'm going to find you. Anyway, some of the other comments coming in here. Eric Von Holstein-Rathlow saying, I met a gentleman this morning who was a federal child trafficking task force federal child trafficking task force, said it's never been as bad as it has been under this administration. There is a billion-dollar industry of sex trafficking. It's run by Mexican cartels. Want to know who the clients are? Maybe some higher-ups in the political ranks who advocate for open borders. I'm not totally open to speculation myself on that, but I do think sometimes people's actions speak louder than words. Brazelton say, I'm still waiting for the Epstein trial. I think also referring to Ghislaine Maxwell. I know I never pronounced that one right, but I do think it is an important one to note that any of the people that they were servicing, shall we say, haven't really been brought up. So another one that kind of exists the back of my mind a lot, but a little bit more closer to home on that. We, of course, had that regional task force announcing some of the results with 70 plus children got from, I think, essentially spanning from more or less Phoenix out, or was it this more state one focus? I might be conflating some different of these law enforcement efforts because there keep being so many. It's definitely a concern. And some of the things coming up, including what not John Brazelton, but John Hertz brought up before the break here on very concerning things involving trafficking. And I know that there are some things about invasion being called for. So it's not the state of Texas declaring it, not saying it should or shouldn't, but let's just get back straight here for a second, that a group of South Texas lawmakers say the surge of illegal immigration amounts to an invasion. Backing of Republican Congressman Chip Roy, who says cartels are exploiting people who want to come to America for a better life. We've been talking about that more than a little bit, and that bears out a lot here. But also there's this idea that an invasion declaration, whatever that might amount to, would allow for an invocation of war powers and allowing state officers to enforce immigration law. That one doesn't quite bear out as much, essentially, because as the courts, even under this one, have more or less definitely put forth that is a federal duty and a federal enforcement entity, even with that whole MPP decision coming out late last week towards the end of this Supreme Court session. One of the last one, if not the last one they announced. I mean, they kind of announced the last set simultaneously. So among the last ones that came out of this most recent Supreme Court session, one of the more impacting ones we've had in recent memory, let's be honest, that was one that was firmly put back into the, if there was any question about it, federal category. So I would not totally say that an expectation on an invasion declaration, whatever that might actually look like, or if this administration would even do it, would be, well, consequential for state level authority. So I don't expect this push to go away anytime soon, particularly from certain state level. I mean, we've got elected officials definitely that have been beating the drum on this for a while, but whether or not it'll actually have an effect is a different question in my mind here. But as also a note on that now it's been reported that all of the 53 victims that died as part of that deadly smuggling attempt in Texas have now been potentially identified, working with officials from Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras, the youngest only 13 years old. So let me say it this way. Disaster, invasion declaration, whatever have you, I find myself continuously more interested in what can be done about the cartels themselves here. Because even the idea of under these vague declarations or War Powers Act would be mostly on essentially the result of the problem. The problem is that the cartels are always interested in making as much money as possible with little to no, often negative concern about how they get to that point and that end. I mean, heck, even when drug prices have been low previously, randomly, I know it happens sometimes, they found themselves in the oil smuggling business because that made sense to them. I'm not saying a whole lot of it makes sense, but they have a business that they need to supply and keep the, I mean, can you imagine an underpaid Sicario and what you could expect them to do? Yeah, they want to avoid that as well. So they're always looking for the biggest money, and they definitely think that they are cashing in on this human smuggling situation writ large, whether it be sex trafficking, which is not that any of this isn't heinous, but this definitely tips the scales on the heinosity, if that's a word. I don't think it is. But seriously, I want to see what can be done for the cartels themselves, directly targeting. Because even if you got serious issues with the amount of people that, I mean, has been analyzed in the tens of thousands, even those currently probably estimated waiting over in Ciudad Juarez for the potential actual end of NPP, Title 42 more specifically, and more impacting, yeah, that's concerning in its own right. But not a lot of these, as much talk as there is about, the caravans that happen periodically. The reason that this is happening, and particularly in the piecemeal that it does, allowing for this, because it wasn't like there was necessarily, I mean, there's been one or two caravans that I'm aware of having been brought up recently-ish, but also some of them that are getting dispersed by the Mexican governments. Essentially, this is happening because of consistent pipelines that the cartels are setting up. So, just saying, in order of precedence, in my mind, you want to talk about disrupting or ending that, cartels are the source. Because sure, it'll still happen at some order, some level, even without the cartels present. That much has been made obvious by any recent look at the situations on the southern border and in our region specifically. You're never going to convince me without some really, really hard evidence there that would not, the removal of the cartels or severe curtailing of their activities would not essentially upend that. I mean, we talk about a lot about the drug epidemic, fentanyl, among other things. And that falls a little bit outside of the category of way we've usually talked about drugs. But also, let's be honest, when it comes to the drug supply and the amount that comes in here, it's not we're flooding the market in order to make it super cheap and just make sure everyone can have it. They're coming here because there are high prices that can be demanded for it, and they know that there is a right buyer's market here within this country. So we've got some other issues. And sure, if you want to treat only the symptoms, well, you know how that works for then leaving the underlying disease in place. Cartels come from a lot of it. Let's just be honest also then on the demand side, because those sex trafficking victims aren't just here and put there and then, well, I'm assuming we'll find a market for it. The cartel kind of thinking about it. It's because people are, in the very sick, twisted sense, hungry for it. I mean, it is, RJ saying it's time for I Like Ike border control with the National Guard. That'll take money out of the cartel coffers. I mean, some of the calls that y'all have been doing, among other things, for I guess there's a definition that needs to be made between the actual shutdown of the border and sealing off the border. And I think that's one of the finer debates that's been going on lately, because the idea of actually closing the border as a legal term would have just serious consequences on this northern part of the border as well, including that those terms usually affect trade, meaning that nothing crosses, not even trade, not transit, not travel, nothing. And the idea would be there, smuggling goes down too. But, well, let's just say, of course, we've been seeing them more willing to go through, I would say non-traditional methods, but it's almost traditional at this point, of people going through the desert, being in vehicles smuggled in. We also had even in the aftermath of this, one of the worst smuggling botched attempts and deadliest outcomes in history, there was, even in our region, 2 individuals at least found within 2 lockboxes, like the back of trucks where you see the toolboxes locked in there. And Lord knows what if that happened to those individuals had they been also abandoned, essentially. I mean, the visceral nature of some of the details coming out of that San Antonio incident continue to be horrifying to me and anyone else with a shred of conscience, which I do not think that the cartels apply, shall we say. So I'm not really sure what the great solution is, but again, I'm open to most anything at this point. Not quite necessarily maybe drone strikes, as some have suggested, because I don't really like the idea of the southern border becoming the essentially line between Pakistan and Afghanistan, the way that has worked. Yeah, that's a whole nother line that's, even imagining it gives me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies. But seriously, focusing on these transnational criminal organizations that aren't doing any real good on either side of the border. Let's be honest. Sure, there are definitely some on the payroll within, the state of Mexico and individual states that definitely, I mean, corruption, mordida, anyone who has crossed the border in any way, shape, or form is not going to be unfamiliar with that, in the way that sometimes there are essential narco states within the state. That is its own level of issue that if the Mexican government is at all willing to deal with, but also given the way that the current president of Mexico, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, affectionately known as AMLO, has shown some unwillingness for, as he's even having his own talk of media coup attempts. Yeah, I'm not sure he's all there either, to be perfectly honest with you. But any competent administration on either side really would be one of the major priorities, because sure, we can talk about securing the border, we can talk about shutting down the border, we can talk about sealing the border, any way you want to talk about it, we can talk about enhanced screenings, all of these different things, but the answer for me keeps coming back to the cartels. And no, this is why I don't put out my address publicly, and why I don't have any particular plans to travel outside of the country anytime soon, I will absolutely say. John Brosnan saying there was much cocaine, meth, and fentanyl coming across the border into the U.S. Every American should be dead. I mean, fentanyl is why I kind of put a caveat, a verbal asterisk by that phrase, because the fentanyl, there's, well, probably someone out there, but no one reasonable that's like, what sounds like I could do a whole lot of right now? Fentanyl, because that person would then be dead, because that's how that works. It's almost in this whole list of, again, heinous, awful things, the most insidious out of them, because of how it is then put into things, even innocuous looking things that can then lead to death, and why it's also very important what we've talked about previously, the idea of there being more Narcan and such things available within our city, because as we are in the close proximity, of course, the ability to deal with this for people who may not even thought they were doing anything illegal, just buying prescription or off-brand medication, yeah, it's seriously concerning. It could affect all of us, and why I think a focus on that is very important as well. But that's taking us through that next break right now. So coming out of this break, a little bit more talk about some of the state level things, including energy supplies, what that means for us around here with our number of pipelines coming through the area, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break with more on Talk El Paso, News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with your KFOX 14 News Update. An agenda item aimed at decriminalizing abortions failed to pass at El Paso City Council today. The El Paso City Council voted 5-4 against the policy. City Representatives Peter Schwarzbein, Alexandra Anello, Cassandra Hernandez, and Henry Rivera voted in favor of the policy, but Representatives Joe Molinar, Isabel Salcedo, Claudia Rodriguez, Cecilia Serraga voted no, with the mayor issuing the tie-breaking vote of no. And police say a victim shot and killed at a home in El Paso's Lower Valley on the 4th of July was 15 years old. The shooting happened inside a home at the 7600 block of Franklin Loop off Alameda. Police investigators revealed the teenage boy was inside a bedroom with other boys ages 16 and 15 when the victim was shot. The involved teens reportedly fled the scene before police arrived. The teen, according to police, died at the hospital. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Gateway East at Joe Battle, that overturned vehicle from the earlier crash is still there. It's blocking the on and off ramps. El Paso fires on the scene. I-10 westbound at Copia, an earlier crash blocking a couple of lanes. All lanes back open on the I-10 westbound there, and a crash reported Zaragoza at Sunfire Boulevard. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with your KFOX 14 News Update. An agenda item aimed at decriminalizing abortions failed to pass at El Paso City Council today. The El Paso City Council voted 5-4 against the policy. City Representatives Peter Schwarzbein, Alexandra Anello, Cassandra Hernandez, and Henry.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Legendary basketball coach at Duke, Coach K, has earned 5 national titles and 3 gold medals at the Olympics. But you'll hear the story of how he was almost fired back in 1983. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Individual results may vary. There's no guarantee that past performance will be indicative of future results. Invest wisely.
Paid for by Chaikin Analytics. Mark Chaikin is someone you're supposed to hate. He spent 50 years on Wall Street helping to create the entire stock rating system. He's met everyone from Jim Cramer to Martha Stewart. And today, he's sharing an urgent warning to tell anyone who will listen. A very strange day is coming to America. In short, a massive and surprising new transition could determine the next group of millionaires, while leaving 99% of the public even worse off than before, says Chaikin. If you want to be on the right side of the huge new shift that he predicts is coming to the market, you absolutely must consider buying one particular type of investment now, before it's too late, he says. To give you the full story, he posted the biggest prediction of his 50-year career online at stockmarketwarning.com/radio, along with the name and ticker symbol of the #1 investment to buy right now. Go to stockmarketwarning.com/radio to learn more, free of charge. stockmarketwarning.com/radio.
If your business is feeling a summer hiring wave, then you need Indeed. Their all-in-one hiring solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply. This report is sponsored by Indeed.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, being on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media sites we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk. A lot of people tuning in, chiming in over there. John Brazelton, Kathy Codry, RJ, Maria Kallman, Eric von Holstein-Rathlow, John Hertz, and more, also dropping those likes, and we actually do appreciate Robbie Flores, Flaco Jimenez, and Monica Cervantes. We do appreciate it as it helps us with those algorithmic things here. Maria Kallman making a point about the city manager here. One thing I wanted to say before we get back into those comments here, though, was about, since we're, of course, just freshly off the heels of the July 4th holiday, happy Independence Day to everyone who celebrated, except for those of you at 2 a.m. launching off aerials. I am unhappy with you, and I think a lot of people in everyone in a 5-mile radius is. But related to this, that the El Paso chapter of the Flags Across America in need of help to maintain the Old Glory Memorial. If you're at all confused about what I'm talking about, take yourself a drive north on 54 from, well, the Spaghetti Bowl, and it's the giant flag that you're going to see right off to the right side of the road there. So it's pretty hard to miss, to be perfectly honest with you. So keep that in mind. That if you like that thing and want to see it continue, some people that I've had interactions with, including a long relationship going back to high school, including going to a youth leadership conference out in Arizona with David Thaxton, vice president of the El Paso chapter of the Flags Across America. They've got bills. They need to keep that going. So if you're feeling particularly patriotic or have a little bit of volunteer, they both need some donations and volunteers to keep everything there going. So keep them in mind here, really, if you want to be a part of it. oldglorymemorial.org is the place to find out that. So keep that in mind here, oldglorymemorial.org. If you like that, want to see more of it, or just need something to get involved with, there you go. So what Maria was saying here, getting to that comment here, that she watched she tuned into KVIA the other night and watched the city manager interview. We often don't necessarily talk about other media's coverage outside of what our news partners are doing here, but since you brought it up, considering it an insult to her intelligence, quoting from her directly, he had the nerve to state he was giving us the best bang for our buck. How many of us make his salary? The average tax bill will increase by $193 due to assessments. This does not include the hike that will finance UMC expansion, while many pools and services remain closed, rather. Politicians here need to concentrate on a sensible budget and less frivolous spending. I really need to find that quote, because I am 90% sure that it was our current city manager, Tommy Gonzalez, back during some of his initial years in town, at how fascinated he was about the amount that, well, I think the way it was put at the time, El Pasoans demand extra services, including parks, amenities, etc. But also, I want to say that maybe not necessarily qualifying that as the people of El Paso so much as the top level representatives of the people of El Paso. Had a conversation with someone a little bit earlier about the way that El Paso, or in general, things seem to work around here, and more people being involved is something that I have long advocated for. And I think that would be more than a little bit, not necessarily an immediate solution, but a solution, a required one. Let's put it that way, because people getting involved and being aware of it, is how things either get fixed or changed. Equal measure maybe needed of either here. But speaking about elections, of course, we are now, and this hurt me when it was put to me this way, 4 months out of the November 8th general election. Just a little bit of tightening of the chest I'm feeling here. Don't worry, I'm not going down anytime soon. But seriously, I am both excited and mildly terrified for this election. Not quite an equal measure, but the latter is creeping in a bit more for me, because the amount of fever being drummed up before it, there's going to be a lot on this ballot. At least one interesting article out from the Texas Tribune today, saying how the end of Roe and the Uvalde shooting could reshape the race for Texas governor. Of course, a lot of analysis on this, and we've talked about that more than a little bit on this program here, but more specifically out today, some more polling, particularly in that gubernatorial race, because that race is probably going to be one of the more watched ones going on in the state from around the country, I guess I should say. And there's a new poll coming out of CBS News and YouGov that has, it's got some issues with it. I know there's at least one person out there that usually asks, what was the margin of error, who was sampled? And so this one was 1,100 Texas adults, but there's no real indication if they were registered or even likely voters, and the margin of error was about 5% on this one. So taken with a grain of salt, but if you're into that kind of thing, it did show an Abbott with an 8% spread here. So still outside the margin of error on this one, but one of the higher margin of errors in the many polls that have been going on. I will say, as much talk as there has been about the potentials for this race coming out of it, and a lot of excitement and or lack thereof, depending on who you ask, there's definitely been a trend showing up here. I mean, Abbott has waxed and waned a bit, depending on some of the dependencies of the poll here. One of his biggest ones, most recently coming out early mid-July, June rather, I mean, from Blueprint polling, had him at about 18% points up, and then the more recent one that we talked about came out about 5 points up, still within the margin of error, and this latest one putting him at 8 points up in the spread here. And there has not been, even in any of these more dubious polls, any time that essentially the O'Rourke campaign has been in the black on this. They've always been a little bit underwater on the vote count. So not that that was unexpected in a state like Texas, and including one of the major polling organizations I look at, among others, 538, still putting Texas firmly in the likely red category, which I am, and again, not at all. Well, actually, solid red, I should say. Misspoke there. Because likely is one thing, solid is another when you're talking about some of these polling rankings here. So again, not at all surprised, because again, this is Texas, and while Texas politics are always different and may not make a whole lot of sense to outside or even inside observers, there are definitely certain trends that can be recognized regardless of where you're watching it from, inside or outside the stadium. So yeah, it's still pretty likely, including their 538 pegging the race at 54.9 to 41% in favor of the incumbent, and that will probably bear out. But I'm also willing to say that the idea of the monthly surprise, because like, sure, the October surprise, but it feels like we've had the April, the March, the June, probably July surprise. Like every month has more or less hit that, I feel like. So yeah, this is probably not going to end anytime soon, which is where that slight bit of, terror starts marching in for me when we keep looking at these races and what's going to come out of them, including, the top of the ballot obviously gains a lot of the attention, but we've had some of the down ballot ones that are getting an increasing amount of attention on them in their own right. So yeah, no, this is gonna keep going on for a minute there. So we'll keep checking in on some of those differences, some of those movements on it here. I will say, just because everyone keeps asking about it, and bring it up here locally, which is more than appropriate, but that local race, either in the Texas 23rd or the Texas 16th congressional district, currently held by Republican Tony Gonzalez, the 23rd, and then the 16th, Democrat Veronica Escobar. Those aren't making a lot of these statewide lists. I'll say that. Some of the major focus coming on in the congressional districts, the 28th out of Laredo, and the 15th and the 34th in South Texas. So that's one of the, I guess, kind of in retrospect, mildly prophetic things that has been said, including when, of course, Governor Greg Abbott was here, not the most recent time, but the second most recent time, if I've got his order of appearances correct, when he did more of his stump speech as opposed to when he appeared with the Texas Sheriff Officers Association, saying that they are focusing on the border and want to see a red wave hitting there. So some of those focuses continuing on. And so there's some likely and or possible things going on within those that will still, even across some of the Texas Senate and House races, some of the more competitive races that some of the both statewide and national observers keep looking at. So I will fully expect that to happen here. Was Gardner mentioning that down ballot, like a Justice of the Peace Precinct 7 race is not often talked about. I will fully admit that that's not much of one we have focused on ourselves here, but hey, I'm not opposed to it once we get closer to it, as we've now got that just over 4 months to go here. Woof. Anyway, we got to take that next break right now, but coming out of this break, we'll go ahead and open up those phone lines as we do during this point in the program. So that number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. A lot more to get to here. Haven't even talked about the energy situation I said we would. So we'll get into that and your comments and your calls. Again, that number, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Gateway East at Joe Battle, that overturned vehicle from the earlier crash is still there. It's blocking the on and off ramps. El Paso fires on the scene. I-10 westbound at Copia, an earlier crash blocking a couple of lanes. All lanes back open on the I-10 westbound there, and a crash reported Zaragoza at Sunfire Boulevard. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Giving up the stability of your job and creating your own business is not common. You'll hear the story of a young woman who quit her corporate job to begin making artisan keycaps. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
As a marketer, you want to reach everyone, adults, teens, millennials, but it's not like these groups all hang out in the same place, right? Actually wrong. They're all right here, listening to radio commercials just like this one. Radio ads connect with 93% of Americans every week. That's more than Google, more than Facebook, more than TV. In fact, radio reaches 20% more millennials than TV. Want more of the people you want to talk to all in one place? Visit iHeartAdvertising.com and get AM/FM working for you. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
Are you a safe driver? Are you looking to save money? With DriveWise from Allstate, the safer you drive, the more you can save. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
M1EP.com, superior multifamily property management services citywide.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly at this point during the program. When we do have that phone line open, if you wanted to chime in that way, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM, talking about a lot of local and otherwise impacting our locality issues, energy supplies, taxes, one thing I'll get to here in just a second, some of those city council votes, some more documentation coming out, or at least pushes for that whole county hospital district UMC situation here. So again, if you wanted to chime in that way, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM is the number to dial here. A lot of comments coming in online. Don't forget the Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Definitely available, and you can leave your chime in over there, including Kathy Gaudry expressing her dislike of the Beto campaign, of course, referring to their former El Paso Congressman Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke and his campaign for governor, being, of course, the pretty near unanimous Democrat, at least on the ballot anyway, for that race, but going against the very much political machine of the last couple of decades. Yeah. Of what's been going on with Governor Greg Abbott. But one other point and a question coming here, IDWDHW, if I'm supposed to be pronouncing that differently, let me know. asking, how long do you think this local housing bubble will last? Andrew asking me there, saying that again, quoting directly from them. I came here in 2015 as part of my military service and later bought a house in 2018. My house, $105,000 after closing costs. Now my house is valued at $168,000 and my taxes are too high. I'm in the Northeast. Love to hear your thoughts. Okay, full disclosure here, not a realtor, not a real estate attorney, legal expert, financial guy in any way. If you're going solely off my advice, good luck, and I would fully not recommend it. Check with like competent people on those things. But from my observations, because I have been in the house hunt and some of the things coming to a close here, thankfully, hopefully. And so just my observations, then I'm not even a good example, even if it does go as planned, because our situation has been very outside the normal from everything I've heard. But in short, I think the market is cooling. But like that's taking like a cast iron out of the 500-degree oven and putting it outside for a minute. Sure, it may be cooling, but it's still like 400 degrees. So to say that, oh, it's definitely going to be, hot enough to handle soon, probably not. And even then, there's one example that's going to live rent-free in my head for a long time, even in the midst. And this was after not the most recent interest rate hike, but in the midst of them, and while more being announced, that last 50 basis point hike, 0.5% hike, there was one property that we were interested in seeing in a place that we liked in town and liked the idea of it. But apparently the renter in there was more interested in buying it for themselves to continue living there. And so they were being a little bit touchy about actually having like open houses, people coming to see it, canceling them, those kind of things. So we never even got to see a chance to see the place, and neither did anyone else. But that didn't stop there from being, and it still kind of shocks me even talking about it, there were 4 sight unseen offers, cash over asking. Yes, they had not seen the property. They offered a cash amount and it was over the asking price. So yeah, that may be, again, totally anecdotal, as a lot of the things that I talk about in my life, of course, is. But seriously, to think that it's just totally cooling down, because even if the interest rates are therefore making money more expensive and making it harder for people to get access and even afford higher properties, the supply is still very low because of the new builds, the supply chain issues that we also talk about way too much. Not that I'm sick of the issue, but it keeps coming up too much. It still is too present. So supply chain and even just the labor force, all of these things contributing to make it so that new builds, new starts. I mean, El Paso has essentially been shifting east since my lifetime. Let's just call it that to be simplified, because you could pick a particular point, but certainly feels like it's been on the order of decades here. I remember going out to Tinseltown, that being the end of the earth, going out before they even really built that whole 375 interchange with I-10 out there, and now it practically connects all the way out to Fort Stockton. Let's be honest, and before long, Horizon City isn't going to be this enclave out in the desert, but rather a municipality inside the probably larger municipality of El Paso. That's my cloudy crystal ball talk at this moment, but that whole movement has been stymied within the last couple of years. So I don't think it's, again, cooling in a relative manner, because, yeah, going from 1,000 degrees to 900 degrees is cooling, but is it still hot enough? Is it anywhere near hot enough to handle? Probably not. So short answer, buckle up, and this is why voting is important here. And Maria Coleman making a very good comment about that earlier. I am involved with upcoming elections, but citizens should also aspire to involvement and always vote. City manager is not elected. I do remember sometimes someone saying taxes are higher because we want world-class services but don't want to pay the fees. Yeah, there's a lot of truth there as well, and we'll fully agree with you on that first part about making sure you are voting here. But Flock Jimenez saying Northeast does El Paso's best kept secret and will probably get even more pricey, honestly, in the long run, after they finally get off their butt and do. Okay, it's no longer being called that Northeast Parkway, but I think they're just calling it the Loop 375 extension. Yeah, I think it'll essentially connect, of course, over to 54 even more directly, as opposed to that curve that it takes to turn into Trans Mountain. It'll basically go straight up and then connect over to like near Sean Haggerty, I'm guessing. Haven't seen those new documents yet, but then might even go out to the Anthony's Gap area. So yeah, I do think it'll probably, in your neck of the woods, the prices will keep increasing regardless of whatever general housing in the area is doing. So buckle up. Best advice I can give you right now. Again, not a legal person in this way at all, so don't come at me if you're like, well, your predictions were wrong, because yeah, my crystal ball is cloudy at best. And if I had a clear one on this, I would have done half the east side already. Anyway, tell you what, I have talked a little bit too long for us to get to another full call here right now. So we still have those phone lines open. If you're wanting to get on that line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. If you're on the line, stay there. We will get with those calls right after this break here at the top of the hour news here. So stay tuned for more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I mean, we're talking about a lot of issues today. Housing prices, bills, taxes, all of that certainly front and center in a whole lot of ways, including some of those city council votes and such, as well as energy prices. We're going to get to that next hour. Bound and determined to do so because that is affecting me and a lot of others here. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break in the top of the hour news here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Your host, Andrew J. Polk. That number again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back in a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Gateway East at Joe Battle, that overturned vehicle from the earlier crash is still there. It's blocking the on and off ramps. El Paso fires on the scene. I-10 westbound at Copia, an earlier crash blocking a couple of lanes. All lanes back open on the I-10 westbound there. And a crash reported Zaragoza at Sunfire Boulevard. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Are you getting letters from the IRS? Did you know that the IRS can take your house and empty your bank accounts without even notifying you? VersiTax can protect you from all of this. VersiTax client Catherine Valdez.
Using VersiTax, I saved over $33,000.
Call VersiTax and discover all the latest relief programs you qualify for in the first free call.
IRS, getting it off my back was definitely a stress relief. I could sleep good at night, no more IRS letters, clean slate. I'm actually getting refunds back. It's amazing.
Call VersiTax for free tax relief information. The call is free. The information is free.
Customer service was amazing, and I would definitely advise anyone to go with VersiTax.
Call 800-202-7709. That's 800-202-7709 for your free tax relief information. Call 800-202-7709. 800-202-7709.
Over the last 30 years, 8 million U.S. service members have returned home after serving our country around the world. The biggest challenge a returning vet faces is getting back to everyday life. And a key to that is personal wellness. iHeartRadio has teamed up with some of America's biggest veteran organizations and programs to create Show Your Stripes, a one-stop destination for veterans and their families to find the resources they need. If you're a veteran facing challenges, or if you're looking out for the well-being of a veteran you know, visit showyourstripes.org today.
Sweetie, want some fruit? You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
Because you never hear this.
Hey, hon, I'm late. Chris, I am so pleased you missed the beginning of our meeting.
Thanks for making me wait, Dad. I talked to a lot of strangers.
Check on your commute. Stay informed. Traffic and weather all day. Or you might never hear the end of it.
Well, you were late to our anniversary dinner that one time.
Yes, how could I forget?
El Paso's News Radio 690. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Lake County Deputy Chief Chris Cavelli says there were multiple prior interactions with the suspected shooter at an Independence Day parade that left 7 dead.
A family member reported that Cremo said he was going to kill everyone, and Cremo had a collection of knives.
Police went to the home of Robert Cremo III and removed 16 knives, including a dagger. More details are being released about how Cremo moved after allegedly opening fire at the parade. Police say he went to his mother's home and borrowed her car, then drove around to multiple places, including Madison, Wisconsin. There are no current plans for President Biden to visit Illinois after Monday's shooting. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters the president will stay on schedule during a planned midweek trip to Ohio. Oil and gas producers are firing back at the president after he blamed them for rising prices at the pump. Biden recently laid the blame for high gas prices firmly, in part at the feet of U.S. energy producers. Biden tweeted, "Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you're paying for the product." The U.S. Oil and Gas Association responded by saying, "Make sure the White House intern who posted this tweet registers for Econ 101. A Georgia grand jury is sending a subpoena to Rudy Giuliani to investigate potential criminal interference in the 2020 election. Lisa Taylor reports.
The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reports Fulton County is also summoning other members of former President Trump's legal team, along with South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. These subpoenas are the closest to Trump's inner circle as the 23-person special grand jury has summoned so far.
R. Kelly is no longer on suicide watch at the New York City jail where he's being held. The R&B singer was sentenced last week to 30 years in prison for efforts to collect victims to subject to sexual abuse. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. New Jersey is strengthening its gun laws. Natalie Migliori has the details.
We are making Gun Safety Package 3.0 the law of the land.
Applause erupted as Governor Phil Murphy signed 7 measures into law more than a year after their introduction. As part of the package, gun manufacturers and retailers can be held accountable for unchecked marketing and sales of firearms. Training is now required before gun purchases, and out-of-state gun owners who move to New Jersey must register their guns. I'm Natalie Migliori.
A doctor at the University of Colorado is searching for funding to help him study a possible breakthrough in the treatment of Parkinson's disease. Dr. Kurt Fried has spent years studying the disease and believes he's found a drug that suppresses the development of Parkinson's in humans. The drug is already FDA certified, which is considered a disadvantage because drug companies like to hold exclusive patents before they invest in clinical studies. A new office has been created by Virginia's governor. Richard Stelling reports.
Governor Glenn Youngkin is backing up his promise to remove 25% of the state's regulatory requirements. The governor recently signed Executive Order 19, which created the Office of Regulatory Management. The new office will manage functions like regulations, permits, and grants. Youngkin said the executive order will also track new regulatory requirements and review existing regulations every 4 years.
The Spam brand is celebrating its 85th birthday today. The world's favorite little blue can was first introduced on this day in 1937. What was once a wartime staple is now a trending ingredient on TikTok and a favorite of celebrity chefs, with a 16,000 square foot museum in its honor. Over 9 billion units of the canned meat have been sold in 48 countries since its debut. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Bank. That's bank. Enter it now.
Make this the year you go to our iHeartRadio Music Festival.
iHeartRadio, let's go! Friday, September 23rd and Saturday the 24th.
T-Mobile Arena here in Las Vegas.
Buy your tickets now at AXS.com.
The iHeartRadio Music Festival is connecting all of us.
Capital One is the proud partner of the iHeartRadio Music Festival for the 6th year in a row, bringing great products, rewards, and services to its customers. What's in your wallet?
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Giving up the stability of your job and creating your own business is not common. You'll hear the story of a young woman who quit her corporate job to begin making artisan keycaps. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Maybe you've had to put off a health appointment or two during the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you're 45 or older, there's one test you shouldn't put off any longer: regular screening for colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is a leading cancer killer, but it can be prevented with regular screening starting at 45. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. It takes guts to put your health first. Ask your doctor about your options today. Visit cdc.gov/screen4life for more information.
This is Alec Baldwin. I'd like to invite you to listen to my new limited series podcast about a true American hero who lived to tell the story of his imprisonment by the Japanese during World War II.
I'm kind of proud of the fact that I'm a survivor. I wouldn't want to go back through it, but I wouldn't trade it either. It changed my life completely.
Listen to Ben Steele American on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media outlets we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. You're never going to be a quiz on that, or maybe just for funsies or anything. You're never going to be needing to know and rattle off exactly like I do, but just so you got the information of how you can both see, interact with, add your 2 cents with the show is important, in my mind. Anyway, if you disagree with me, let us know through those outlets. But also, if you're more extraterrestrially based, anyway, however you're listening to us, if you want to call in, got that ability, that number to do so. With the phone lines open right now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot of stuff we're talking about and getting to here today, so getting back to those phone calls in just a minute. A couple of comments I want to mention here. Some of the discussion we're having about elected officials and people on the ballot and being involved with the election here. Maria Coleman with another interesting point here after IDW DHW said, thank you for the comments. Again, my best analysis on the housing market situation. And Maria Coleman back on that, saying the housing market spike is being fueled by investors. The salaries here do not support individuals having the resources to pay $50,000 over asking price. City officials are aware and are taking advantage of the situation. Many homes will become rentals. Transient renters don't vote. Perfect scenario for officials. I mean, renters can vote, but I think there's a grain of truth to what you're saying there, that people without real stake in the area tend to not be as involved. And we have some notoriously low involvement as it is, so probably not the best trend to be having here. Absolutely. And I know that, heck, even the place I'm currently renting, the amount of calls I've gotten, I am not the owner of this building, and I have gotten the call saying, hey, do you want to sell that building? And after I get past the who the hell are you is, why do you think I could sell that building? And they start hanging up pretty quickly. But a couple of names keep coming up. I mean, I have occasionally asked them, like, who are you with? And they end up being these just incredibly generic names of like a home buying associate or property buying specialist or something like that. Like, it's almost insipid how generic it is. But I mean, a couple of names keep coming up nationally, including BlackRock and Endeavor. So yeah, I wouldn't be that surprised, as Ed Clora mentions there. Absolutely. So can't confirm that from my personal experience, but let's just say that there are certain patterns that emerge here. But let's get back to those phone lines right now. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Russell in Southern New Mexico on the line with us here right now. Russell, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to, you brought up the subject of the open border business with Mexico. And from my perspective, I'm 77 years old. I've been born and raised here on the border. I've ranched on both sides of the border. I've traded cattle. And I've seen this thing progress to where my main interest is my 2 little great-grandchildren in Las Cruces. And what it's going to look like 50 years from now. And there's only 2 ways this thing's going to turn out. We're either going to elect some pretty hard-nosed, patriotic people to Congress, or we're going to allow the Mexican Taliban to run this whole Southwest.
That's an interesting way to put it there, yeah.
I'm encouraged by some of the people running for Congress, like the lady from South Texas there, the Hispanic woman, and there's some people in other parts of Texas and Arizona that mostly veterans have got an interest in getting this thing straight, but we better get her done. We better get her done quick. That's all I got.
No, well, appreciate the point in the comment there. Some have had questions about ability to call in and comment on the show. Basically, if you're hearing us, particularly terrestrially, you're more than welcome to comment in here because that's the issues we cover. So appreciate your point and your call.
Okay.
All right. Have a great one there. I mean, yeah, the issues in southern New Mexico definitely are very similar to a lot of what we see here in West Texas, though, of course, the state level government's definitely at difference there. Well, definitely a finer point to be made. I know that this has previous sheriffs in Las Cruces or Doña County in general been concerned about some of the like boot heel implications, and that was at least came up one of the most recent times I can recall doing the reporting myself, that is, was whoever was the sheriff at the point in time when the Oregon Mountains National Monument was coming up, as there was concern both about the amount of land within the county that was going to be dedicated to that, and then the sheriff at that point in time brought up a finer point about concerns about smuggling, that they've only got certain accessibility and essentially coverage area that would then be made more easily for, essentially his implication was that smuggling could occur just kind of a mad dash across the border and then to that area where they would not be able to enforce it as such without other things happening. So they don't know if it was exactly at that point in time or when exactly that is, but more than 5 years ago, I know that much here. So let's get to a couple more calls in the line here. Again, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM, the number to call there. We do have Raul in Northeast on the line here with us right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Well, sadly and tragically, another mass shooting in the U.S., this time at a 4th of July parade in a heavily Jewish community with 4 of the 7 murdered with Jewish last names. El Paso was affected with a mass shooting with an assault weapon in the hands of a racist, xenophobic Trumper. There are racist, xenophobes, anti-Semites, white supremacists, and KK members in Trump's base, like the ones who showed up at Charlottesville to protect the statue of Robert E. Lee, who were chanting, "Jews will not replace us. Jews will not replace us." You know, sadly and tragically, Americans are not safe from possibly being murdered by a nut with an assault weapon at a 4th of July parade, kids not safe at school, worshipers not safe at services, shoppers not safe at Walmart, partiers not safe while partying because of the easy and wide availability of assault weapons and cowardly politicians in the pockets of the gun and ammo industries and the NRA who allow these weapons in our communities. So far this year, there have been 300 mass shootings in the United States of America. Now, liberals, we're okay with Americans owning a pistol, a shotgun for home security, and a rifle for hunting, but not assault weapons. Not any weapon that can quickly shoot many bullets at extremely high velocities. Who needs that? These weapons and the politicians who allow them in our communities have robbed Americans of their freedom to be safe anywhere and anytime. That is so tragically sad. And speaking about politicians, the January 6th Congressional Committee announced another hearing a week from today. And I think they're fulfilling their duty and responsibility of finding out why the Capitol was attacked, who was involved, who knew what and when, and who did what or did not do what they should have done, and so that this never, ever happens again. And when they've completed their hearings, they will issue a report and possibly make a criminal referral of Trump to the Department of Justice. And based on the evidence and witnesses that the committee has presented so far, I place the odds of the Department of Justice opening an investigation of Trump for a coup to be fairly high, more likely to happen than not. One more thing. By the way, there are pictures of the Highland Park terrorists at a Trump rallies and of him draping himself with a Trump flag.
Wasn't going to talk about this today, but since we've had it brought up so vociferously here, whenever there are incidents like this, outside of our local area, I wasn't going to bring it up, but jumping to any conclusions within the first 48 hours is a mistake. I'm just going to say that flat out. So you're entitled to your opinion on it, but that opinion is more likely to change than not, depending on what we've seen out of here. Because yes, I've seen many preliminary things coming out of online, including the idea that he may have been a rapper and a graduate of Harvard, but a lot of that is not settled yet. Though I will say there is one thing that Robert Crimo III is out, as of coming into the middle of the show, now facing 7 counts of first-degree murder, with the Lake County State's Attorney Eric Reinhart saying he anticipates dozens of more charges. So don't think this will be, not that it would have been the end of it, but even just in the criminal count here. But also, I mean, thank you for telling me what rights I can or cannot get, or what you're going to allow me to do. Also, thankfully, that's not how this works. And not to drag up an old point here again, but since we're visiting a few of them, the idea that, okay, we're allowed to have a pistol, which again, thank you. You want to talk about the majority of gun crime in this country is done by pistols. So if you're really saying that you're concerned about gun crime and what it is, you're missing the point there a little bit. I mean, what happens in Chicago on any given weekend, and where there are murders. I mean, we have it very good in general in this area where we have been in many various years the safest city in the country, not necessarily by like a vote, but by the stats, because sure, we're not crime-less in this area and murders do happen. On the order of major cities of which we are similar size, we're, again, got it pretty good. But to say that, I mean, again, that, okay, well, pistols are fine. You can have that. Besides being patronizing as hell, is just not backed up by the actual factors of what you're worried about. Again, it's very clear that the concern here is for the highest level, the things that make the front pages and not the everyday crime that happens literally every day across this country. And that's just, I find that frustrating, because if we really want to talk about solutions for gun crime, going with the biggest, scariest, the flashiest things that make the biggest headlines is not even beginning to be the way to go about it. If you want to talk about actual restrictions, things that would have due effects, such as, frankly, I'm finding myself increasingly in favor of the idea of waiting periods, or at the very least, fixing the NIC system, the National Instant Background Check system, because that has so many holes as to be porous as hell. It's frustrating as hell. So I'm not even saying that I fully disagree with you on the idea that things need to be fixed, but the way you're going about it is very much towards your conscience and what will put you at ease as opposed to reality. And that's a major issue with the conversation we're having here, as is jumping to conclusions among other things here. Yeah, a lot of comments coming in on this, and we got more calls coming in as well. Tell you what, we're going to take that next break of this hour right now. Coming out of the break, we'll get to more of these calls in the line. They just filled up, but if you want to try to make your way on that line, add your 2 cents. That number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Eastbound on the Gateway East at Joe Battle Boulevard, an overturned vehicle from earlier still blocking the on and off ramps there. I-10 eastbound at Airway, a disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. On Joe Battle, southbound at Edgemere, the left lane is blocked by the on-ramp. And Red at Wrestler, you got an injury accident there. Take High Ridge or Westwind Drives as alternates. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. The 4th of July deals are hot at Lowe's. Protect your garden soil all season long with Scott's Naturescapes mulch, 3 for $10. Lowe's, home to any possibility. Valid 6/23 through 7/6 while supplies last. Selection varies by location, excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
I've always gotten tons of UTIs. Cranberry products never worked for me, and I was desperate for a way to be proactive. I'm Jenna Ryan, CEO and founder of Eucora. We've worked with doctors to develop effective urinary tract health products. Just mix a packet of Eucora with water and drink it when you need support, like right after intimacy. Eucora is helping over 100,000 women stay healthy. Ready to join them? Get 30% off at eucora.com/radio. That's UQORA.com/radio.
Want to kill bugs like the pros do? Now you can with Maggie's Farm. Created by pest control professionals, Maggie's Farm plant and mineral-based products provide amazingly effective insect control. Ants, roaches, spiders, flies, mosquitoes, you name it, we kill it. All of our plant-based products are safe to use around children and pets and won't leave behind a messy, oily residue like some other products. Maggie's Farm. Lethal to bugs. Easy on the planet. Look for Maggie's Farm at your favorite retail store or at maggiesfarmproducts.com.
Traffic's bad enough without Mother Nature adding to your headache. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. A lot of different comments coming in here, more than I can count here. Certain topics definitely seem to bring people out here, but IDW, RJ, James Ratcliffe, Kathy Codry, Flaco Jimenez, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, John Brazelton, Quint over on the YouTube, interesting comment there. There should be calculators in history class. Interested to know what you mean by that one here, as we talk about numbers sometimes, but also the Flaco Jimenez also saying about the idea of finding a house, saying that there being investors coming in is definitely true. Had trouble finding his house for that very reason and getting lucky with it. Kind of feel a similar way with our most recent escapades dealing with it here. Monica Cervantes also chiming in saying that East Las Cruces and the Oregon Mountains is Bureau of Land Management jurisdiction. They monitor the area as well. Again, that was my supposition, but I just remember it coming up, a previous sheriff in Doña County being very concerned about that. So if anyone can direct my thinking on that, who the heck it was at the time when the Oregon Mountains were being talked about as a national monument, that would be helpful, because I could try to figure out what we're talking about here. But IDW mentioning in life, we always want to know the why, just to have some semblance of closure, as if understanding alone can solve the problem. We feel better about ourselves when we understand, but evil honestly is evil, whether we understand it or not. Yeah, that's the thing about life, and why life is often, and I don't even mean a little bit, but like a lot stranger than fiction, because among other things, fiction has to make sense. No one's going to buy a book that is just gibberish or it doesn't have a clear narrative, any of those things. So it has to make sense. It has to follow certain norms, certain forms, or break with them in ways that are still able to be understood. Life has no such constraints on it. We may think we understand it for a lot of the time, but oftentimes there's so much out there that is nonsensical, counterintuitive, but objectively true and real, that we just got to deal with it sometimes. And let's just say the human psyche, as I am an amateur studier of, definitely does not like that. But let's go back to those phone lines right now. Again, that number to call, full up at the moment, but if you want to squeeze in, the number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Let's see right now. We do have Tony on the west side with us right now. Tony, thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Now, most of you know me as Tony from the west side. Some of you know me because you've met me in person as Dr. Anthony Barcini. I do have a license for psychiatry from a Cracker Jack box. I want to make that very clearly. Therefore, I have an obligation every now and then to provide therapy to some of the callers, again, under the license of a Cracker Jack box. And one of the things that I noticed today on the calls is I have my obligation to counter and or provide therapy on the air for free for some of the distressed callers, some of the hate-filled callers and so forth, one being in particular my patient from the Northeast. And I have to say that what has to be cleared up is the repeating so-called assault rifles. Now, there have been some, I'm sorry?
Yeah, agreeing with you there.
There have been some pistol stocks, pistol handles and so forth put on some rifles, but the repeating rifle goes all the way back to 1903, okay? I think Winchester put one out. So this thing about assault weapons, they have been with us for a long, long time. What has changed, dear patient, what has changed is that we no longer have the same moral standards. And because we have gotten the 10 Commandments out of the schools, even though we could have left the one about not killing, you know, the one about not stealing, you know, the one about not lying to your teachers, we could have at least kept 3 of them, you know, and not called them religion. We might have just called them morality, common sense morality. Don't kill your fellow students, don't steal from your fellow students, and don't lie to your fellow students. But no, you threw them all out with the baby with the bathwater. And now you're blaming the assault weapons, which by themselves cannot kill a single person. So what really has changed, my friend, is the morality that you, the liberal Democrats, are teaching our nation. You're destroying the family unit. You're destroying our biblical standards of love thy neighbor and so forth. And the increase of deaths in Chicago, we lay it at the feet of the Democrats. The increased murders in New York, we lay it at the feet of the Democrats. The increased murders across the nation, we lay it at the feet of the Democrats. The increased violence against police officers, we lay it at the feet of the Democrats. The increased violence across the nation and the deaths and the rise in deaths and defunding police and the increase in violence and law and order and the lack of law and order, everything is laid at the feet of the Democrat Party, which is 10 times greater than any drive-by shooting or mass shooting that you're referring to, my dear patient. So we'll pick up on your therapy again tomorrow, same time, same station. Thank you for your time.
Sure thing. Thank you for the point in the call there. I mean, yeah, the whole assault weapon thing, I find myself oftentimes even falling to it because it's a legal term that doesn't have like a whole lot of representation in reality. Oftentimes when you look at the laws of, well, let's just pick on California and New York, as we often do, because you're not finding it in Texas, I'll guarantee you that much, is a lot on features. Semi-automatic is focused on one, but the fact of the matter is that the vast majority, and I do mean the vast majority of rifles sold in the United States fall into that category as well. A lot of times the idea of weapons of war coming along with it, it's just a downgraded version of, you know, the military weapon. Like, sure, like a lot of these analogies made, but again, this is not just some idle talk. I often say that I'm not an expert in a lot of things. I just play one on TV. But in this one, I actually have had certification. I am a certified AR-15 armorer, which is, of course, the platform that is most talked about, and certain similarities but major differences in other such platforms, such as the AK Automat Kalashnikov platform that I feel more qualified than not to talk about. But oftentimes what the law comes down to be is about certain features that are, unfortunately, the only way I can describe them is scarier than not. The idea of bayonet lugs, grenade launchers, chainsaws have come up, at the very least in popular depiction, if not actual law, among other things, flip-up sights, collapsible buttstocks, all things that, sure, they affect the form factor of the weapon we're talking about, but not in any way the function. The function of the weapon remains essentially the same, even when we're talking about all these accessories, but that's often what's used then as the definition of this. One of the more key ones being the detachable box magazine, and that sure is a feature of it, but not to go too deep into the history lesson here, the way that it is done, as much as there's consternation in other issues about the knowledge and relative study that has been done by politicians involved in the lawmaking on this and other realms, that can definitely be felt in this one as well, because it's often a responsiveness to, okay, what is most concerning, what are we most worried about / scared about, as opposed to, okay, what would actually make differences and affect what could or could not be done here, which is why when it comes up, the idea that, oh, well, no, pistols are fine, ends up being anyone who actually knows what they're talking about, a little bit laughable, among other things here. But let's go back to the phone lines here. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Stephen on the east side here with us right now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Anchor.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, so, Tony just laid it out beautifully, and you too, that I think Raul actually just kind of gets on, spouts his talking points, and he must hang up or just totally shut down completely, because he's constantly being educated on the radio if he were to listen, but he doesn't, because anyone who knows anything knows that even the mass shootings, not just violent gun crimes, but even under the definition of mass shooting, I think it's 3 or 4 people, pistols are number one.
Yeah.
So he's constantly wrong about that, among many other things like the January 6th thing. If they wanted to prevent that, they could have gotten the National Guard as Trump recommended. But anyways, that's not why I called. It's been a while since I brought up the subject of COVID-19 and this virus that's essentially endemic at this point.
Yeah.
So it really is everywhere. And once it got out of the box, there was kind of no stopping it. The best you could do is try to protect the most vulnerable, who are the elderly, people with pre-existing conditions. And I do think the original vaccine did help with that initially. But one of the reasons why they never developed vaccines for these coronaviruses is because, like the common cold, it changes so much that once you develop a vaccine for it, it's not going to be as effective down the road. And that's what they're seeing now, is these original vaccines, they don't have nearly the efficacy because the virus changes. So it was kind of like we're all going to get it eventually, even if you have vaccines, even if you have boosters, we're all going to get it. And that's kind of to the point where we are now. So it makes you wonder, looking back, if it was worth it to shut down everything, shut down the country, get into this extreme amount of debt, extreme amount of inflation, make everyone, even the young and the healthy, stay home from school, stay home from work. Was it really worth it to this country? Or are the long-term effects of what the government did by shutting everything down, shutting down society, is that actually going to be worse than the virus itself? So I think that's a question that people are going to be asking as the years go by, especially if there's going to end up being food shortages, starvation as a result of government policies. So I think it's something that people should at least think about and reflect on before something like this happens again, and to whether or not we're going to encourage the government to force these kind of mandates and regulations on the people again.
Yeah, the use of power, force, etc. out of the government is always a pretty pressing topic, to be honest with you. It's not one ever much far from my mind, because even outside of these circumstances, anytime it happens, essentially it's concerning to me. Whenever there is this use outside of, even within the lawmaking process, honestly, the level of what they're able to do in curtailing of rights and such, I mean, there's a reason we focus on it to the level that we have. And yeah, there are some reasonable questions to be asked. I think that there are also unreasonable ones to be asked, but let's focus on the reasonable ones for a minute. A part of the circumstances we are looking in El Paso is that the local health authority has announced in El Paso that we are currently on a high level due to increased hospitalizations. But something I will also say, beyond even the vaccination status and what's going on with that, is that treatments have gotten better. Like, even I want to say it was last week / late last month, that there was more talk about there being high levels already within New York, particularly New York City, but that their deaths had not seen a commensurate rise with the infection rates because, well, we've seen better techniques. We were dealing with something that was essentially of this stripe, brand new at the start of this, and more technology. We're past the whole ventilator shortage for the most part, exempting certain areas. So things have certainly changed, and our response, our knowledge of it has increased and changed as well. So that, I think, is one of the better takeaways taken from this whole situation, is that, yeah, preparation and not having a lack of imagination of what could come next is going to be very important for future global health planning. Because, yeah, just saying shut it all down, or even the more really kind of half-assed way we'd had it in most of the United States, because there was a little bit of, no, we're not shutting anything down, and they fared the way they fared, and some of the, we're going to shut everything down. But the way we saw it in a lot of states, and I'm frankly going to say including Texas, was kind of somewhere in between, trying to please everyone while simultaneously just ending up ticking off everyone on all sides of the spectrum here. So I'm going to say Texas wasn't a great example of it, and frankly, why Greg Abbott had the major challenges he did during the primary process was about his decision-making, and why the state legislature probably should have stepped in, but, well, they don't really have the option to unless the governor wants them to. But the level of concern I do share with you, because if this was the dry run for maybe a truly disastrous potential one, yeah, I have concerns.
Yeah, and it's partly a problem because a lot of the people don't trust the government. They don't trust the, quote, the science, because so many things were politicized that people, even if they are getting good advice, they won't know it because things have been so politicized. I remember when I think Donald Trump mentioned, oh, we're looking into these treatments, we're looking into these treatments. And he just mentioned hydroxychloroquine as a potential treatment. And at that time, nobody knew if it was going to work or not. They hadn't done large studies across the globe. And shortly after that, when a couple of the major journals posted an article that said that hydroxychloroquine didn't work, and they cited these studies. It turned out to be fraudulent. They had to retract those from the major medical journals, and that actually prevented the people from around the world who were going to do large double-blind studies to see if it actually did work. And all of those got canceled because of this fraudulent things that were posted. Anyways, the point of that is that the only reason that kind of pushback on that medication was let out was because Donald Trump said it, and everyone hated Donald Trump. So they tried to anything he said, they would try to push the opposite. And so it got so politicized that no one even trusts those once respected medical outlets and journals and everything. So it's going to be a real challenge moving forward where things are so politicized, and you might be getting good advice and not know it.
Yeah, the politicization and the lack of faith in institutions you're referring to there is definitely, in terms of if we're dealing with any other level of global pandemic. I mean, there are certain ones that have come up and not borne out so far, but let's just be honest, with the even now still globalized nature, the fact that things are still sourced from around the world, and even if we're looking at a realignment of the order of trade of the world and maybe not being so international, it'll still probably be very hemispherical. Like, you're going to still get it from your portion of the world, and outside of there, we're probably, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that there will be the possibility of another pandemic before too long. How long that is, I have no good gauge on, but I mean, just the way this happened, though, you're talking about, the genie out of the bottle before too long. In other terms of like deadlier diseases, let's just say like Ebola, that doesn't spread as well and definitely kills more. They do things called like contract tracing, knowing exactly who, what, when, where, how it moved. And it wasn't, that broke down almost immediately here in the U.S. That would have been the way to have kept it in the bottle and in the box, and that just kind of was never really possible due to both the nature of the disease and, well, the serious issues they had in how they put out this information. So, yeah, I'm going to call it, I hope it's going to be some good lessons learned, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that either.
Yeah, and of course, when they try to force people, that doesn't help either, because ironically, trying to force people to get vaccines probably prevented people from getting it who actually needed it, because that's just how people react. If you try to force them, they're gonna push back.
Yeah, again, it's something that I bring up infrequently, but I remember back in, frankly, the World War II era, when there was rationing going on because of serious lack of supply happening at that point due to the war effort, there was a push for people to do more with sweetbreads, essentially organ meat that is not traditionally done in a lot of Western diets. And they actually tested this in a couple of different ways. The first one was telling them, you need to do this or you're not going to do it. And the acceptance rate was in the low teens, if anything. But then they also tried them when there were community meetings where they would have people, give them a chance to ask questions, talk with people who are the butchers and the suppliers of this, and ask them okay, what do you think about it? It wasn't 100%, but it was in the 40% acceptance, saying, okay, I would be willing to try it at the very least. And that as I think a very important lesson that was not learned here, but should be thought of for the future, that treating people like people, giving them the information and letting them come to conclusions and providing, transparency is a much better way to go about this.
Yeah, good talking to you. Have a good evening.
You as well. Appreciate the point in the call here. We got to take that next break right now, but coming out of this break, we are going to talk further about these issues and take a few more calls. Again, you're listening to Talk El Paso. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with your KFOX 14 News Update. An agenda item aimed at decriminalizing abortions failed to pass at El Paso City Council today. The El Paso City Council voted 5-4 against the policy. City Representatives Peter Schwarzbein, Alexandra Anello, Cassandra Hernandez, and Henry Rivera voted in favor of the policy, but Representatives Joe Molinar, Isabel Salcedo, Claudia Rodriguez, Cecilia Serraga voted no, with the mayor issuing the tie-breaking vote of no. And police say a victim shot and killed at a home in El Paso's Lower Valley on the 4th of July was 15 years old. The shooting happened inside a home at the 7600 block of Franklin Loop off Alameda. Police investigators revealed the teenage boy was inside a bedroom with other boys ages 16 and 15 when the victim was shot. The involved teens reportedly fled the scene before police arrived. The teen, according to police, died at the hospital. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
An overturned vehicle still blocking the on and off ramps. Gateway eastbound at Joe Battle Boulevard. On Joe Battle southbound at Edgemere, an accident there is blocking the left lane by the on-ramp. Looking at slow traffic on Artcraft westbound between West Side and the I-10. And an injury accident red at Wrestler is slowing traffic. Try Westwind or High Ridge Drive as alternates. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We continue to deal with plenty of monsoon moisture, folks, and with that here, we could still see the chance for some isolated showers and thunderstorms, some of which can produce very heavy rain and flash flooding. So for that reason, we remain under our weather warn at least through 6 p.m. on Wednesday.
This report is sponsored by the Ben Ferguson Podcast.
Possible jail time for January 6th committee witness, and Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's story unravels as well. Coming up on the Ben Ferguson Podcast all week, we'll dive into these two stories as their lies finally may have consequences. Download the Ben Ferguson Podcast now.
Individual results may vary. There's no guarantee that past performance will be indicative of future results. Invest wisely.
Paid for by Chaikin Analytics. Mark Chaikin is someone you're supposed to hate. He spent 50 years on Wall Street helping to create the entire stock rating system. He's met everyone from Jim Cramer to Martha Stewart. And today, he's sharing an urgent warning to tell anyone who will listen. A very strange day is coming to America. In short, a massive and surprising new transition could determine the next group of millionaires, while leaving 99% of the public even worse off than before, says Chaikin. If you want to be on the right side of the huge new shift that he predicts is coming to the market, you absolutely must consider buying one particular type of investment now, before it's too late, he says. To give you the full story, he posted the biggest prediction of his 50-year career online at stockmarketwarning.com/radio, along with the name and ticker symbol of the number one investment to buy right now. Go to stockmarketwarning.com/radio to learn more, free of charge. stockmarketwarning.com/radio.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Staples has the innovative tech and tools you need to take on the future of work, all at great prices. Right now, save up to $260 on select PCs. In-store only, offer N79 limit 2 while supplies last. The latest tech solutions are at Staples, the working and learning store. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
City streets or small towns, everyone deserves a clean, green community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Let's do beautiful things. Visit KAB.org.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to chime in on the show, even as we're getting towards the end of it here. We still got calls in the line. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Write it down if you can't get to it right now. But also don't forget there are those ways to leave us messages before and after the show, or even during, but we'll get to it next show. Either through the pound 250 system, the way you use that, dial pound 250 on your phone, say the keyword Talk El Paso when asked, and then you can leave us a message there, day or night. And there's also, of course, the talkback feature over on the iHeartRadio app, looking a little bit like this. That red microphone button. Tap that, you get the option to leave us a message. Just make sure you're close enough to the microphone. We've gotten a couple that I could kind of hear, but not quite. Treat it like a phone call, basically leaving us a 30-second message. So like a phone answering message. Better way to put it there, maybe. We'll get back to those phone lines there right now. We do have Joe on Northwestern line here with us right now. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Jerry.
Oh, Jerry, sorry.
Yes, sir. Anyway, I want to answer Raul's question of who needs an assault rifle. Okay, I'm not agreeing that these are assault rifles, but according to Title 10, U.S. Code Title 10, subsection 246, every male from the age of 17 to the age of 45 is considered to be in the unregistered or unregulated militia. Then in Title 32, U.S. Code Title 32, and I don't remember what subsection it is, every male from the age of 17 to the age of 65 is considered to be in the unregulated militia. In accordance with also Supreme Court case of the U.S. versus McDonnell, and it was Miller, in 1939, those weapons are to be used as the National Guard or reservist use. They're supposed to be compatible.
Mm-hmm.
So every male that is 17 to the age of 65 is authorized to have those type of weapons. And those weapons are to conform to what the current reserve or National Guard is using. So if they're using M16s or the AR-4s, an AR-15 is semi-compatible, and it'll need adjustments. But you don't have to change the box for the magazine, nor do you have to change the caliper of the weapon, nor do you have to change sighting systems of the weapon in order for it to be compliant with that code. You will have to change the triggering mechanism, allowing it to fire more than one round per one squeeze. And they do have modifications for 3 and 4 rounds that you can change it to. So, Raul, every citizen, male age 17 to the age 65, according to the U.S. Supreme Court in Miller versus United States versus Miller,
right,
Supreme Court decision, is authorized to have them weapons. That should answer his question. Now, on to the energy portion.
Oh, right.
U.S. Interior just passed a thing for how many leases they're going to do last week. They're only going to do 11 offshore drilling leases for the next 5 years. Under the Trump administration, they had authorized 47 drilling leases in the Gulf and offshore for the next 5 years when he was still in office. That's going to take us up to 2028. See, the Biden administration is limiting the number of leases that can be put out there that they're going to give. And it also increases the requirements on EPA standards, environmental protection standards, and the insurance that is required to do that drilling. In case there is a spill or something, the companies have to be insured for so much to cover that spillage. And it's outrageous. It's worth more than some of the dang companies that are out there drilling.
Yeah, and it's an interesting situation. Texas Tribune has a good one on that today, titled Biden Plan Could Allow New Offshore Drilling in Gulf of Mexico, because honestly, the administration is not really pleasing anyone with this. They're both not pleasing, well, part of their base and environmental advocates, essentially calling it out, saying this is not going to be, Nicole Gio, fossil fuels program manager at Friends of the Earth, said, it's definitely a week, I would say, calls into question Biden's commitment to climate change. So taking off them, and then, well, people not of that persuasion, taking them off as well, saying, okay, we need to get more drilling if you're of that line of thinking, and not really seeing that necessarily as being that way either. So, yeah, not exactly a big win on this issue for this administration.
Well, thank you for taking my call and listening to me there. Andrew. You have a good day.
You as well. Appreciate the point of the call. You have a good one there. I think we can squeeze in one more before we hit that next break and end the hour here. I think we do have Andrew on the west side with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much. It was brought up earlier, I believe, by you or one of the during the news breaks about city council and this the motion that did not pass. Am I correct concerning the something about abortion?
Yeah, essentially it was going to be instructing essentially local law enforcement, of course the city police in this case, to deprioritize investigations into abortion. I mean, there's a few finer points to be made there, but it did fail in a 5-4 vote with Mayor Oscar Leeser casting the tie-breaking vote against the item on the agenda.
Well, Andrew, it never ceases to amaze me. Why is city council wasting their time on something like this when there are more important things they could be seeking ways to reduce individuals' taxes?
Yeah, again, it's the economy stupid is a very persuasive, if undervalued, political, just basis out there.
Yes, I agree. And it's getting to the point now, I think if we keep on going the way we are and wages and salaries stagnating, unless you're the city manager, many people are not going to be able to afford the houses that they live in.
That's definitely been coming up as an issue. I will agree with you on this, but I don't think this issue is going to go away. One of the bits of audio that I did hear from this meeting that I am not able to play on air. Let's just put it that way. Showing that there's a lot of favor. I mean, I got a lot of emails and things coming out about this ahead of the vote. So as much as what you're saying makes a level of sense, I do think that this is probably not the last time we're going to hear this on the local agenda anyway.
Yes, I agree. And I must comment on Comrade Raul. I can tell you this much: he does not know a thing about firearms. He likes to use the term assault weapon a lot. Anything can be an assault weapon in the matter of its use. And what did he say? You should be allowed to have a hunting rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol to protect yourself in the house.
Yeah, once again, when people start telling me, "Oh, this is what you're allowed to do," or what I think you should do, and therefore you should do it, I tend to bristle more than a little bit. Not gonna lie.
Yes. Well, myself being an expert in firearms, I can tell you this much: your standard, one of your standard hunting rifles, let's say a Remington 7400, available in various calibers, you can slap a 10-round magazine on that and do a lot of damage. It's you don't need to have an AR-15, and furthermore, once they wait till they start classifying. If you let them have their way, once they start classifying a certain weapon as an assault weapon, next thing you know, your Remington model 7400 and your 700 are going to be considered sniper rifles. So you shouldn't have them.
Yeah, I've already seen that narrative coming up in place as well. So I fully expect that will be the transition to happen, should there be such as another assault weapons ban, et cetera, coming out at the national level.
Well, in that case, back when it happened, Dianne Feinstein, one of the architects of that, she got a gun catalog and just decided to pick and choose what was going to be allowed and what was not going to be allowed.
Yeah, again, levels of concern can vary greatly depending on who the hell is dealing with this issue.
Right. So anyway, I turn the mic over to you and have a good afternoon.
You too as well. Appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one as well. We got to take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll take squeeze in what we can, get to at least tell you what we got coming up for you on the show. Some of those recorded calls as well. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An overturned vehicle still blocking the on and off ramps. Gateway East, eastbound at Joe Battle Boulevard. On Joe Battle southbound at Edgemere, an accident there is blocking the left lane by the on-ramp. Looking at slow traffic on Arcraft, westbound between West Side and the I-10. And an injury accident red at Wrestler is slowing traffic. Try Westwind or High Ridge Drive as alternates. Kerry Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Ben Ferguson Podcast.
Possible jail time for January 6th committee witness, and Hunter Biden and Joe Biden story unravels as well. Coming up on the Ben Ferguson Podcast all week, we'll dive into these two stories as their lies finally may have consequences. Download the Ben Ferguson Podcast now.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Want to kill bugs like the pros do? Now you can with Maggie's Farm. Created by pest control professionals, Maggie's Farm plant and mineral-based products provide amazingly effective insect control. Ants, roaches, spiders, flies, mosquitoes, you name it, we kill it. All of our plant-based products are safe to use around children and pets and won't leave behind a messy, oily residue like some other products. Maggie's Farm. Lethal to bugs. Easy on the planet. Look for Maggie's Farm at your favorite retail store or at maggiesfarmproducts.com.
M1EP.com. Superior multifamily property management services citywide.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Tell you real briefly what we got coming up for you on the show. Going to be checking more in with Estefania this week as more UMC stuff has come out, but also her other investigative reporting. Definitely checking in with her. Also more about the Supreme Court, not necessarily any individual decision, but what this whole session as it came by means, both locally, statewide, nationally, all those kind of levels here. So we'll be checking in on that as a topic as well, because, well, there's at least some in the comments already speculating about future sessions of the Supreme Court and seeing how this one, essentially what trajectory it paints towards. This is an interesting one here, but let's squeeze in what calls we can before the end of the show. We do have Tom in Otero County here with us right now. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to straighten it out for maybe younger people that don't know. The AR-15 is actually the Armalite sporting rifle developed in the late 50s. Mm-hmm. It was converted. It was actually adopted by the military, a civilian sporting rifle. It was adapted by the military, changed and adapted to be full automatic by the military. It wasn't a military rifle that was adapted to be civilian use. It's actually a civilian sporting rifle. So in case people like Raul try to confuse the facts, that I just want younger people to know.
Yeah, the history of
it's been out. It's been available since the early 1960s, long before the military ever issued it to troops. So it's a civilian sporting rifle is what it is.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point to make. I mean, the history of the platform is interesting in its own right, but also the way that it's described about and being used is, well, a finer point that we'll probably not stop debating anytime soon. So appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there. We got one more that we'll get to here. We do have Frankie and Messia. Frankie, thanks for joining us. Frankie, there with us? All right, I think we lost Frankie there at the end of the show, but don't worry. There's, of course, the other ways that you can leave your comments on the program, whether it's calling in on future shows or leaving your comments on the pound 250 system or the other ways. So that's going to about do it for us here today. So thank you all for tuning in, for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when you're out on the road, and have a great evening, all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An overturned vehicle still blocking the on and off ramps. Gateway East, eastbound at Joe Battle Boulevard. On Joe Battle southbound at Edgemere, an accident there is blocking the left lane by the on-ramp. Looking at slow traffic on Arcraft, westbound between West Side and the I-10. And an injury accident red at Wrestler is slowing traffic. Try Westwind or High Ridge Drive as alternates. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
They're here, circling over your head, and are tracking you down. You feel overwhelmed, like you can't escape. You need a solution to get your back taxes filed, to put your life back on track. You need someone who can keep the vultures at bay and work directly with the IRS to leverage every opportunity to settle your debt. Edward Areola of United Financial Services is licensed to represent you before the IRS. Don't let the IRS